Audition comes with a whole bunch of effect presets called favorites. I'm going to show you all the favorites in this tutorial. If you want to follow along, you got to track down 5 files, folks, which is a little bit more than you're used to, but I think by now you're getting kind of accustomed to tracking these things down. The instrumental mix is inside the music subfolder, just too hard to find subfolder, right there, and it just couldn't be that way. I think you probably know where that one is. Just couldn't be that way subfolder. There it is. The noises speech, go back up to noises where you'd expect to find that one right there. And we'll go to singer wave and tone. Those are both inside the demo file folder. Singer. And scroll down there as a tone 220. So what are the effect presets called favorites? They're inside this menu drop-down list here. Here they all are. Now these are different than presets within an effect. If you go to effect, for example, and go to, let's say, delay, this effect has a bunch of presets in it right there. So these are effect presets that are built into individual effects. And also here in the effects rack has presets as well, but these are combinations of effects with properties already applied to them. The favorites are different. Favorites are effects that have presets or that have properties in them, but when you apply them directly to a clip with no options. They just happen. You can't have any control over what goes on inside them. You can't decide to change a property. You just hit this guy and you're done. So let me just run through all of these presets, all these favorites, with the understanding that you could always do this on your own. You could always just go to an effect and have the same end result that a favorite would have, with the exception of 2 of these guys, auto heal and repair DC offset. You won't be able to find effects that do these 2 things inside Audition. Auto heal you've encountered already inside the section on manually identifying, reducing, or removing unwanted noises. This is something that you make a selection and it deletes the selection that does a crossfade across it. A really powerful tool. I love working with auto heal. And then down here is repair DC offset. Sometimes some sound cards add a direct current into the signal, and that moves the waveform, literally moves it above or below this 0 crossing line here. So if you apply that, that brings things down or back up to where they belong along the 0 crossing line. The rest of these things are all effects or menu commands that have more properties or have more options than what you'll get here. Here you just click it and you're done. Let me just run through them. These first 3, the conversion, convert to 5.1 mono or stereo, that is this menu command over here called edit convert sample type, where you have this option to change the number of channels. But you can also change the sample rate and the bit depth, which you don't have the option to do when you use a favorite. Let me just show you how that works. We'll convert this monaural signal to a 5.1 by clicking that. It takes the mono and duplicates it, puts it down here, and adds these 4 blank channels waiting for you to fill them in. But that's the typical conversion. I'll undo that by pressing Control or Command Z and go back to favorites here and move on down the line. De-esser is the de-esser effect that's set to default. You could always go to Effects, Amplitude Compression. There's the de-esser effect. So you could take the extra step of loading that effect rather than just using this preset. You fade in and fade out. Let me just show you how those guys work, and I'll show you the alternative. I'll click away here and open up the 220. Now if I apply the fade in, that creates a linear fade for the length of the entire clip. So fade in, there's this fade for the entire length of the clip. Now that would be really overboard. You wouldn't want to use that probably. So the way you would normally use this favorite is with just a selection. I'll do Control or Command Z to undo that. I'll select this area, and then if I go favorite fade in, you're going to get this linear fade, which is not the most natural fade. It's just a quick way to do a fade. I think the way you'd normally want to do it is just take this lovely little fade in tool there and drag it to wherever you want to drag it to. And I've got the cosine set up here as my preference in the preferences dialog box, and you can hold down the Control or Command key to change. So there we go. I'd rather use that than use the preset. I'll undo that. Down a little bit farther here, we've got a hard limit. Now, the hard limit is just that effect, amplitude and compression, hard limiter, with the setting of -0.1. And what that does is it boosts the input and then limits it after the fact. So that sort of lifts everything to a maximum amount and then holds it down. So it raises the volume all the way across the board, but then holds it down below that limit. So for example, we would take this instrumental mix and apply a limiter to that. I'm going to apply it starting right about here to right about there so you can see how that works. If I just click the preset here, the favorite, and go hard limit, it'll push things up till it touches that line there and actually lifts the volume elsewhere as well. Try and push it toward that line. I'll undo that. Now that's different than using the normalize. Normalize tries to raise the volume as well, but it raises it all uniformly. So if it's a quiet passage, it lifts it equally to a louder passage until the loudest passage gets to the limited amount. So if I do normalize to -3 dBFS, which will be right there, it'll lift these guys. Probably that'll be the limiter right there. Let's see. Yeah, that touches the line first. So that's as far up as it's going to go. It doesn't quite work the same way as the hard limiter does. But you could have used the normalize effect right there instead of taking that preset, that favorite. Lower pitch, raise pitch. This is the effect down here in time and pitch called stretch and pitch. Let me just show you how that works. The thing is, be aware that lower pitch and raise pitch use different amounts. So I'll go to the singer here. And we'll just listen to her for a second.
Just too hard to find.
That's the normal routine. But if I take the favorite to lower the pitch, it's going to lower her 5 semitones, which is the equivalent of what's called a perfect fourth in music parlance. And it won't be a very pleasant sound.
Just too hard.
But if I were to take the effect, time and pitch, stretch and pitch, and lower her 5 semitones, it's going to sound
just too
exactly the same. So that's what that favorite is. It's this effect set to -5 semitones. If I take the favorite for raising the pitch, it raises her 4 semitones, not 5. Raises her what's called a major third in the music world.
just too high.
There you go. I'll undo that and just show you how that works inside the same effect. Right now it'll be up 4 semitones.
Just too.
So you can see that favorite is the same as selecting this guy and going to 4 semitones. Continuing down through our hit parade here, got to remove the 60 Hertz hum. This is the notch filter set with the preset of 60 Hertz. Let's open up the noises speech. If you worked on that section of the tutorials on removing noises, then you've seen this already. Here's the noisy part, the hum part. There you go. If I were to take the notch filter, effects, filter and EQ, notch filter, I would take the default setting, which is the 60 Hertz setting. It would sound something like this.
7 years ago.
More or less like that. And if I were to take the preset here, this favorite, and do the same thing, be similar.
7.
It does reduce the volume quite a bit. It's a stronger version than the default setting, but it is the notch filter at work there. I'll just undo that. Moving on down a little bit farther. Remove vocals. Well, you've seen that inside the stereo imagery center channel extractor, where you extract the center and try to have just the left and the right channel, which is usually the center is where the vocalist resides. So if you apply that to, let's say, this finished work here, where we've got the vocalist coming in right around here.
I couldn't give you what you wanted.
Let's just see what happens if we remove her using this favorite. Remove vocals. You get this kind of sound. And that is the center channel extractor preset for removing the center. But again, this just does a quick and dirty job. It just bam, you're done. A couple more guys to look at here. We've got the repair DC offset, which we talked about already. The telephone voice. Let me go back to the singer for that one. I'll apply the telephone voice. So that's the fast Fourier transform. If you go to filter and EQ, there's the FFT filter. And if you change this to, let's see, telephone voicemail, see what that sounds like. That's the same effect. So again, it's a quick, easy way to get the telephone preset on there, but you could always go get the effect directly. And finally, the voice over compressor that tries to reduce the top end and raise the lower end, which is good and bad. In this particular case, I think it's bad.
Just too hard to
because it lifts up this quiet passage, makes it kind of hum.
find.
But that is the dynamics processor by going to effects, amplitude compression, and the dynamics processing effect does the same thing. If I go down here to the voiceover, has the same effect.
Just too hard to find.
So now we've run through all the favorites. I think your go-to favorite is Auto Heal. And if you're just in a pinch and you want to get a telephone voice, boom, click this, you got the telephone voice. But I think you're better off with all of these things to just take the extra step and get the effect or get the menu command rather than relying on the favorites. The one potentially pretty cool thing about favorites is that you can make your own favorite. where you can take any number of effects you want, any number of properties you want, and then save it. So particularly, this is good if you use the same thing over and over again, you have the same kind of a project. And I talk about how to do that in the next tutorial.